Welcome everybody to our online program on addiction and recovery from the Sunshine Coast Health Center up here in Powell River, BC. And our continuing series on principles of living a meaningful life. And one of those principles is to live life from the inside out, as opposed to from the outside in. It's kind of interesting in the addiction field that if we talk to a lot of family members, they will tell us, oh, he's so selfish, he's so self-absorbed, right? Like, they believe that their loved one is putting all this energy into themselves. But it's a bit of a paradox, because when we do therapy with the fellows here at our center, we discover very quickly that they've really not been paying attention to themselves as human beings, to what's important to them, to what they value. This is the reason, by the way, why guilt is one of the most overwhelming feelings that people in early recovery have. Now, don't get me wrong, they're spending an awful lot of time getting and using the substances, or gambling, or whatever addiction they've got. But they're not really paying attention to who they are and what they want out of life, and they don't reflect upon themselves, things like that. So it seems a bit of a paradox. But the one thing we do know is that they don't really live from the inside out. Just to give you an idea of what this is all about, we show the fellows here the first scene of Apocalypse Now, the movie with Captain Willard is the main character, and his mission is to go off and kill Colonel Kurtz. So Captain Willard in the hotel room. So it's a very interesting scene, because basically it's all about Captain Willard being lost. He has no meaning and purpose in his life. He's just waiting. And as he tells us, I've been here a week now, waiting for a mission. So he doesn't know what to do with himself. And how does he survive in the hotel room? Of course, he drinks a lot. And then for the very clever people who watch really closely about what's on the bedside table, he's probably doing some heroin as well. So this is how Captain Willard exists in the hotel room. And he's just waiting. And then he says this great line, he's waiting for a mission, and they brought it up to me like room service. And this is a good example of someone who's living from the outside in, because the mission did not come from Captain Willard. The mission came from somebody else, from the general. So although it's Captain Willard's mission, it's not from inside of him. It's come from the outside in. And the story of Apocalypse Now, in many ways, is the story of how Captain Willard will change that. So he'll go through these series of experiences, and by the end of the movie, his motivation will come from inside himself instead of from the outside. And it's an interesting example of how a character transforms. And that's a lot of what the addict is looking at as well. So recovery is a matter of transforming how the addict makes sense of life and how they believe they fit in the world, and this transformation. Okay, not really a matter so much of quitting the drugs, but this transformation takes place. And then what we discover routinely is that the addict doesn't feel the need to use drugs because they basically lost their purpose. If Captain Willard is living this life that's coming from inside of him, where he makes decisions, he feels in control, then there's no point in using alcohol or heroin to exist in that world because there is no meaning. Okay, so this idea of living from the inside out, we'll explore that in a few ways. But one of the key points for this little edition of our online series is to understand that addicts generally live from the outside in. They have very little sense of who they are because they simply haven't been paying attention to it. They don't reflect upon their life. They don't think in the past, well, let's see what I've accomplished and what I've dealt with. They don't do that because it usually just brings up too much guilt. And they really don't reflect on the future, because the nature of active addiction is right now. Got to get the drugs right now. And so the future isn't really no good. And the other bad thing about the future is it's very dangerous, because you don't actually know what's going to go on. So you might have this great plan, but who knows whether or not you'll actually get the drugs if you're going to wait for a week, right? So it's got to be right now, immediate. And when you live like that in the present, then life can't be all that fulfilling, can't be all that meaningful. This is one of the lessons we learned from Viktor Frankl, the great psychiatrist, and he always said, anyone who lives only in this moment and in survival mode, without reflecting on life, without realizing that they have potentials, or what we call potentialities, to live out in the future, then they can't possibly be living a meaningful life, because if nothing else, they have no direction. It's only get the drug, use them, or whatever behavior they're engaged in. Anyway, that's it for this edition of our online program, and we'll be back next time to explore some more ideas on this living from the inside out.